Welcome to this week's episode of Requiro. This week we are going to be talking about the interview Luigi Mangione did with the British reporter Gurwinder Bhogal. I'm so sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. I'm so sorry if you ever watched this. We are going to be talking about that interview. It's less of a actual interview and more like a article he wrote on his blog of his conversation he had with Luigi Mangione a couple of months beforehand. One thing I do want to add, please do not come after anyone I've mentioned in this video. They do not deserve it. Do not do that. Please, I do not condone violence whatsoever. This is all just for facts or little interesting bits I found personally interesting about Luigi Mangione or the Luigi Mangione case in general. And I do want to mention, I did say I would do updates and stuff in this part of the video. There has been a lot of updates and stuff, and I don't want to make another 3-hour long video again. So that will be next week's video. But the big major update is with Luigi Mangione. This happened when I was editing last week's video. Luigi Mangione pleaded not guilty in the state of New York with the New York charges, and apparently, for eyes of witnesses, Luigi Mangione was in very good spirits. He was getting along with his legal team very well, and there wasn't any cameras or photos or anything. But we do have drawings and quotes from people saying how Luigi Mangione looked. So according to witnesses and the drawings we gotten in the courtroom, apparently Luigi Mangione was wearing a light yellow, beige type of jumpsuit, like prison jumpsuit. I think that's what it's called. And because it's spring and it's a lot warm over there, so he wasn't really wearing a jumper with like a white button-up shirt. And according to some also other pictures, he's not in like any vests or chained up or anything. So I found that quite interesting. Apparently his hair looked like this. Hi, it's voiceover me. So this is strictly just for the people that are just listening to the video. So his hair currently looks like what it did in like 2020. His hair's a lot shorter, a lot more neater now compared to his last court appearance. I think his barber did not know how to work with curly Italian hair. Anyway, and for the people who say who cares about his hair, the answer is we need to know. We need to know he's taking care of himself and looking sharp. Okay, back to the video. Very important stuff. But I do want to put this here. It is a very big update. I will cover more of the details of that in next week's video when I cover all the other updates and the documents I wasn't able to cover in my last video. Also, if there's anything I missed or forgot to cover or anything like that, please let me know in the comments down below, and I'm sure I'll bring it up in my next video or pin it in the comments down below. And also, all the information and all that I've used for this video will be on my website for this week's video if you guys want to check them out and do your own research. Please do your own research. I very much recommend that. Now, let's get into the video. So this is a article by Bhogal. He did a interview with Luigi Mangione a couple of months before everything went down, and it was a very interesting read. I read it a couple of hours ago before I made this video, and I did find it really interesting. Near the end, I'll point out a couple of things I really want to highlight and I find really interesting. And I know this was done like at the very, very beginning. I think it was an interesting read to bring up now still. I think it was kind of lost. No one really talks about it, but I do think it's like a very interesting thing to bring up as well. We can like learn a little bit more about Luigi Mangione. So some people say it was an interview, some people say it was when he was arrested, some people say it was before he was arrested, so I'm here to clear it up. So it wasn't really like an interview. So basically, Luigi Mangione really liked this journalist's work, and he signed up for a membership where he could have a 2-hour conversation with the actual journalist. Just clearing that up, it's not an interview, it was more like just a conversation between a person who really liked their work and also the actual reporter, Gurwinder Bhogal. Again, if I say his name wrong, I am so sorry. I'm doing my best. And we'll see if we'll like release the actual full interview to the public. I don't think he will. I feel like there'll be like mistrust on like their behalf, and I don't think he like recalls them. I don't know, I'm not him. This is more like a article he wrote, him talking about the discussion and all that he had with Luigi Mangione. I won't cover the parts where he was talking about everything happened in the actual blog post. I don't think that's really relevant to the actual like conversation he had at the time, but if you guys think I'm wrong, wrong, let me know, and I'm sorry. So this is the actual blog post when he was talking about his discussion with Luigi Mangione. The blog post was posted on December 3rd, 2024. So this is what it says.
After the suspected killer of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was revealed to be Luigi Mangione, a bright young man from a well-to-do family, thousands of pundits rushed to tell us why he did it. I, however, held back, because unlike them I had actually met Luigi, and I knew all was not what it seemed. For days after the revelation, my phone buzzed incessantly from journalists asking me for comment. I found it hard to say anything coherent, because my mind was a storm, constantly replaying memories of my interactions with the suspect, trying to find meaning in even our most banal exchanges. In the days since, I've developed some detachment from the situation, and now feel clear-headed enough to offer my full opinion. So here it is. Luigi first reached out to me via email on the 6th of April. He said he was a longtime fan of my work, and had just purchased a $200 founding membership to this blog, which entitled him to a 2-hour video call with me. A month later, on the 5th of May, we had our chat. He was warm and gregarious from the outset, praising my writing and telling me how excited he was to speak with me. He said he was on holiday in Japan, which prompted me to ask him about it. He replied that while he loved many aspects of Japanese culture, such as its sense of honor, he believed Japan was full of NPCs, people who don't think for themselves. He then told me a story he'd first mentioned in an email. One morning he saw a man having a seizure in the street, so he ran to the nearest police station for help. They followed him back to the man, but refused to cross any street if the stoplight was red, even if the road was empty, as the man was seizing on the ground. Luigi lamented what he called a lack of free will in Japan, by which he meant a lack of agency. I quickly realized that agency was a major concern of Luigi's. He said 3 articles of mine had particularly resonated with him: The Intellectual Obesity Crisis, Why You Are Probably an NPC, and Why Everything is Becoming a Game, all of which describe threats to human autonomy. Luigi went on to explain why he felt Japan was the future dystopia I'd warned about in some of my writings. He spoke of the hikikomori, Japanese men who lived their lives alone in their bedrooms, sedating themselves with video games, porn, and other shallow entertainments. For Luigi, such people had lost control over their lives, becoming mindless slaves to stimuli, much like the cops who stopped at red lights even when it made no sense. But it wasn't just Japan. Luigi believed people everywhere were becoming NPCs, increasingly living their lives as a series of reflex reactions rather than consciously choosing their behaviors. Japan was just the canary in the coal mine. The West was following close behind, driven by tech companies intent on mesmerizing us into servile consumers. Luigi feared that once we'd surrendered our agency, we'd surrender everything else. Unlike most people who decry others as NPCs, Luigi showed enough awareness to identify that he, too, lived much of his life on autopilot, confessing that he sometimes wasted whole afternoons doom-scrolling social media. He said he wanted to regain some of the agency he felt he'd lost to online distractions, so we spent much of the chat discussing ways he could become more agentic. I told him about my favorite philosophy, Stoicism, and how it could teach him to ignore distractions and focus his mind on living more deliberately. Luigi listened intently and showed much curiosity, gently stopping me to ask me to explain terms he didn't know. I also suggested to Luigi that he should avoid automating the tasks he wanted to improve at, and should instead seek to make these tasks fun by turning them into games. This led us to discuss my essay about gamification, why everything is becoming a game. Luigi had much to say about this essay, not least because it involves the story of the Unabomber, Ted Kaczynski, who shared Luigi's belief that modern life is taking away people's agency. Kaczynski was a terrorist whose bombs killed and maimed innocent people, and I made it clear that, while I agreed with some of what he'd written in his manifesto, I found his actions abhorrent. Luigi agreed, saying something like he deserved to be taken seriously, but he also deserved to be in jail. Besides Kaczynski, Luigi's intellectual tastes were relatively normal. Writers he spoke fondly of included Tim Urban, Sam Harris, Yuval Noah Harari, Jonathan Haidt, and Aldous Huxley. His political views were less conventional. When I asked him if he was voting in the presidential election, he scrunched his nose and said he wasn't crazy about Trump or Biden, but liked some of the things RFK Jr. was saying. Somehow, from there we ended up talking about intergenerational trauma, and it was here that we had our only significant disagreement. Luigi implied that he believed trauma could be directly inherited, and that it accumulated in families much like generational wealth. He claimed to have based this view partly on his own personal experiences. I can't elaborate. It sounded to me like he was describing a pseudoscientific misinterpretation of epigenetics, popularized by activist academics and books like The Body Keeps the Score. The idea that trauma is passed down epigenetically is not only unscientific, it's also unagentic. If you believe your trauma is hardwired into you, you're prone to passively accept it rather than actively trying to overcome it. And so, in a bid to increase Luigi's agency, I pointed out why I thought he was wrong. After we exchanged pleasantries and ended our chat, I sent Luigi an article debunking epigenetic trauma. Luigi replied shortly after, thanking me for the article and clarifying his beliefs. He also told me he had bought me a 6-month subscription to the app, Readwise Reader, because he knew my job required extensive research, and believed the app would help. Gurwinder, it was great meeting you yesterday. Really interesting to hear your story. Eventually I had to stop because everyone either got arrested or killed. Has to be my favorite quote lol. Thanks for the clarification re intergenerational trauma. I had always understood the term intergenerational trauma in a similar vein to generational wealth, but substituting accumulated wealth, obviously not genetic, for accumulated behavioral tendencies. I didn't realize the current narrative incorporated epigenetics into that definition. Thanks for sharing these articles. Just read both of them. I particularly appreciated Khan's clear breakdown of intergenerational versus transgenerational epigenetic transmission. Readwise Reader, I can't emphasize enough how powerful this tool is for anyone who consumes digital information. I see it as one of the cornerstones of an effective digital workflow, almost on the same level of importance as having a note-taking app or digital calendar. I've used lots of shiny apps in the past, Pocket, Notion, Trello, etc., that were initially exciting, but ultimately not life-changing. Readwise is different. It unifies a PDF reader, EPUB reader, newsletter reader, Twitter list accumulator, Baboon's YouTube player, and web browser highlighter, distraction-free, offline, modern UI, and built-in active recall plus spaced repetition. Apologies if I sound like an ad here. I just really appreciate your work, know it must require extensive internet research, and wholeheartedly believe AdWise could supercharge your workflow. I just gifted you a 6-month subscription to this email address. Highly recommend you give it a shot. If it doesn't live up to the hype given your use cases, no harm. The other thing I mentioned yesterday, Tim Urban's What's Our Problem? I think you'd find tremendous value here. Lot of overlap with your ideas. The first half covers a lot of Harari and Dawkins, but in more accessible language to the average person via Tim's humor and stick figure drawings. The second half dives into social media, polarization, and Tim's toolkit for critical thinking and healthy political discourse. Even if you're familiar with many of the concepts, I still think his writing style and the way that he distills these ideas might offer inspiration for your own writing. Looking forward to phase 2 of Gurwinder. Best, Luigi. Now, I have Asperger's, so I'm a poor judge of social cues. Further, I've liked every subscriber I've had a video call with, and I've had many, so I'm probably not very discerning in that regard. But to me Luigi seemed like a particularly nice guy, polite, thoughtful, curious, and kind. It wasn't just that he bought me a subscription to an app he thought might help me. It was also that he showed this same desire to help people he didn't know, frequently expressing concerns about humanity, and wishing to find ways to improve everyone's lives. He viewed most people as NPCs who needed to be awakened, but he never came off as arrogant, regarding himself as equally zombie-like in many of his thoughts and behaviors. His view of society was somewhat pessimistic, but he tempered it with a sense of humor and a focus on finding solutions rather than merely complaining. And although he seemed to have some unscientific views, he was always open to other viewpoints, and was willing to update his beliefs if corrected. We interacted on social media several times afterward, and each time he seemed as polite and thoughtful as he'd been in our chat. As the summer ended, I largely withdrew from social media to focus on my book, so I didn't notice Luigi had vanished. In my limited interactions with Luigi, I never got the impression he had spinal or mental issues, but I did get the sense he felt alienated. He often decried the lack of social connection in the modern world, and on a couple of occasions he lamented that the people around him were on a different wavelength to him. On the 10th of June, I received my last communication from Luigi. It was a seemingly innocent request. He wanted me to help him curate his social media feed. I'd already given him tips on how to do that, so the question struck me as odd. I directed him to a relevant article I'd written and offered to answer any questions he had about it. I never heard from him again. In retrospect, I wonder if his request was an awkward cry for help. As a New York Times journalist told me, it was his last known online communication. It's hard not to wonder if, had I answered his call, things might have turned out differently. I don't know if Luigi ever found the agency he came to me looking for. If he didn't, I hope he gets the help he needs. But if he did find his agency, well, the price of agency is culpability.
So that was the full blog post by Mr. Bhogal posted. I'm gonna call him Mr. Bhogal because I think I can say that a little bit better than his full name. I'm so sorry. I know that's like the biggest disrespect you can give someone is pronouncing their name wrong and still not saying it correctly when you know it. I'm so sorry. He did do about 2 interviews, CNN News Network, and also another one with the Hell. If you guys want to both check out those interviews, I'll put those 2 interviews on the actual source section on the website so you guys can check them out. Basically, what he said in those interviews is exactly the same as what he said in his blog, but again, take it with a little bit skepticism because news networks, they can like edit things to make things sound differently than they actually are. Again, just go to the blog post. These are going to be some bits I kind of want to highlight and talk about a bit that I find quite interesting. Do want to do a little bit of a trigger warning here. I do want to say we are going to talk a little bit about like generational trauma and all that here, so please fast forward if this triggers you or anyway or anything like that. I really want you guys to take care of yourselves, so if you guys get triggered or anything talking about anything about trauma or family trauma, please fast forward onto the video where we skip over this bit. So the first one is I'm going to talk about where Luigi Mangione and Mr. Bhogal were talking about generational trauma. I found this bit quite interesting. We don't know what he fully said, and Mr. Bhogal won't elaborate on it. And I do respect him for that. Talking about trauma and all that is a very touchy thing, and some people don't really respect it or take it seriously, and that's a shitty thing about society. So basically, Luigi Mangione says thinks generational trauma is passed down like generational wealth, and Mr. Bhogal doesn't agree. He doesn't think generational trauma is passed down and thinks it's a different thing. Now, I'm going to touch on a little bit about that because, and also says in the article, he doesn't want to elaborate about what Luigi Mangione said about generational trauma. He did say it was from his own personal experience. Hearing those words sounds like Luigi Mangione did go through some family trauma, so I do find it interesting seeing the differences between someone who has been through trauma compared to someone who thinks it isn't passed down, when I kind of agree a little bit with Luigi Mangione. It isn't passed down, like, I guess, through genetics, but it is very much passed down through actions. Trauma is very big, especially with generational trauma, and it can be passed down where parents or grandparents refuse to recognize their own pain and struggles and put that pain and struggles on the actual kids themselves, then starting the loop all over again. I think, personal opinion, also a little bit of my own personal life. I'm not going to talk about it or I will be crying, and I don't want to do that. And it kind of sounds like Luigi Mangione did go through some family trauma, and that does stick with you and changes your mindset as a human being compared to someone who's never been through trauma or anything like that. If you've been through trauma, your brain reacts in things in different ways compared to other people who've never been through trauma in their life. Okay, so this is near the end of the article where he commented, Luigi Mangione said he felt like a lot of people around him weren't really on his wavelength, and I kind of want to touch back on the generational trauma bit. If Luigi Mangione did go through some family trauma, it is very much a thing where people don't get it or understand if they've never been through generational trauma or anything like that. I'm gonna talk a little bit of my own experience. I won't say anything. I really don't want to, because I've also had these kind of conversations with people that have never been through trauma themselves in their life, and they don't truly understand or get it because it's not like on the TV shows or movies, and they really do not get or understand the situation. It kind of made it hard to come out and speak up about things you've been through, or they don't truly get it or bother to try to understand. And he also said in the article, Luigi Mangione did feel very alienated as well, and you do feel very different compared to everyone else and society because because you went through that pain and struggle. And also on top of that, Luigi Mangione also had a back condition, and I don't know how long he had this back condition for, but it does sound like he's had this for many years. Another thing with having a invisible disability that no one can see, no one really respects it or understands. That's probably another reason why he kind of felt like alienated, people not truly understanding what he's going through or his problems. So one thing I do want to add, if you guys are listening, if you have a friend or family member and they feel brave enough to tell you about anything that they're going through, please have an open mind and respect it and try to understand what they're going through instead of dismissing it or saying it's not that big a deal, or even acting like it's not that big a deal, because to them, coming out and saying stuff about something they're going through is very much a very big deal, and it is very brave of them to come out and tell you. So for you, be a respectful, supporting friend or family member, please do the next step. Just listen or maybe help them. That will be the world to them. And the lack of social connection in today's society, he commented, Luigi Mangione said, and the lack of social connection in today's society. And one thing I do agree with Luigi on that, there is very much a lack of connection with especially young people these days, with like where there's very much a kind of a loneliness epidemic today, especially with young people, and I very much notice it. I'm very much dealing with it with myself. I'm calling myself out right now. It sucks. We are not going to be talking about the loneliness epidemic with young people in this video. You guys want me to talk about that? I'll definitely talk about that. So I did find that interesting where Luigi Mangione said there's very much lack of communication and connection with people, especially today. A lot of people don't really want to make the effort of full-time, long-time connections where you need to put the work in, and it is very hard to make full-time connections with people when one person does and the other person doesn't. It's a very shitty thing, honestly. So this is more like I just found it kind of interesting more than I have an opinion about it. When Luigi Mangione thinks people are very much like NPCs. If you don't know what that means, it's basically a video game character who basically just doesn't do anything. Putting things in a fire like wood or something, and that's all they do on autopilot. I do find that kind of interesting. I do find this article very interesting, especially with the bits where Luigi Mangione spoke a little bit about generational trauma, and I do recommend you guys to go read it. It's a very good read. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to make this little video about the interview. I did really want to make a video about it. I found it very interesting. I think we get to learn a little bit more about Luigi Mangione and how he thinks. Mr. Bhogal did say he is very much a nice, sweet, considerate man. I find that like really sweet. So it does sound like Luigi Mangione is a very nice, considerate young man. Why do I say young like he's younger than me? He's older than me by 2 years. And we learn a little bit more about Luigi Mangione's character. It is a very interesting read, and I did want to bring it up and talk about it. If you guys want updates in the future about anything, and if there's anything I've missed, please let me know. Thank you for watching this week's video. I upload once a week or maybe 3 times a month, depends what I'm working on, and you can subscribe if you want to. It's okay if not. If you guys want to keep up to date with the channel, you can follow the channel's social medias. That's where I basically show you guys what stories I'm working on or anything like that, and I just keep you guys up to date what I'm working on during the week and stuff for this channel. I'll be in the description down below. If you guys want to follow me personally, all my social medias are down below as well. All the information in this video will be on this week's episode on my website. Basically, the website is just basically where I can keep all the information and all that on everything I've worked on all into one place, so you guys can find it easier to look for and find. So that'll be all on there. I hope you guys found this video interesting, learning I guess a little bit more about Luigi Mangione's character and who he is. But yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!